we see this. We actually can see this all throughout scriptures, can't we? We can see Jesus got led out by the Spirit to where? To wilderness. What was he doing for 40 days? I mean, well, it says at the end of 40 days, Satan shows up to tempt him. What was going 40 days? That he could go without food or water. I mean, it's just things that I start thinking about. Do you ever think about that? Talk about the conversations he's having. Talk about what him and the Father are doing. I mean, just think about this, that 40 days, he's so satisfied by the Lord. I mean, think about John the Baptist. He's out in the wilderness, and he's out there, and he's locusts and honey. Think about what satisfies you to keep you there. You understand, you see all throughout scriptures, Isaiah 35, it talks about how springs gush forth in the desert. See, a lot of times when we get into the process, myself, especially me, I want to run out of it. You know, when I get into the fire, if you would, I want to leave the fire. You know, we've been talking about the baptism of fire a little bit, and it's like, you know, I thought this was just like some cool experience on a Sunday morning where I would start getting hot and shaking like, ooh, fire. And I thought all these things were always going to happen. And that can happen, but you know what I actually realized it was? When I prayed for the fire of God, it led me into the wilderness for a process. If you're in a wilderness, the baptism of fire has already begun. But guess what? You're not there to stay there. We're not there to stay there. God, when he led Ezekiel out to the desert of dry bones, he brought them there to prophesy. When he brought John the Baptist out there, he brought them out to call people back to God and prepare the way for a king to come. When Jesus went out to the desert, he came back, and what did he do? He crushed. The enemy came with the 3 types of sins, and he said no to every single one so you and I could. And then he solidified the deal when he was crucified and resurrected. You also see it in Elijah. You see Elijah in 1 Kings 17, Elijah of Tishbe shows up out of nowhere. And he just shows up, and he rolls up to a king. Can we imagine this scene? You got King Ahab. Now, things are probably going pretty good in the kingdom at this moment, because they're not crying out to God because things are going good in those moments. And you got Jezebel and Ahab there, and then you've got Elijah. We don't hear anything else about him beforehand. And he just walks in. He says, there's going to be no rain at my command. What? What would happen? Think about that. He rolls into a king and tells him there's not going to be rain. Now, what are you doing? I'm probably laughing because that's the only reason why he's probably not dead. Because he's like, for real. This guy is telling us there's not going to be rain. You have control over the weather. And he's probably laughing at this guy. He's laughing at him. And then what does the Bible say? And then the Lord leads him out to I think it's the Kidron Valley, and he has him there, and God's feeding him by ravens, and he's drinking from the brook. So what does God do? He gives him a word. He gives him a prophetic word, right? He gives him a word of like, you're going to be basically, it's not going to rain without your command, and so it's probably going to rain with your command. Well, at that moment, he had authority to decree that it wasn't going to rain, but the question is, did he have the authority to decree that there would be rain? Yet. Because what we see God take him through, process. The presence is about process. The presence isn't about a revival meeting. The presence is a process with him, in him, all the time. So this is what happens. He's there, and what is happening in the brook? God is feeding him by ravens. Do ravens naturally feed people? What do you usually think of ravens? I usually think of scavengers, usually think of death. I usually don't think of some kind of like life-giving bird that comes with a steak from Ruth Chris and delivers it to me. I'm not thinking this. He's bringing him some meat, and he's delivering him to him, right? And that he's eating from this place. But then the Bible says, so he's there. He's in a place of personal growth, of personal intimacy, to his personal brook with the Lord, where he's being fed by revelation, and he's using situations that don't make sense to be there's his stepping stone instead of his stumbling block. So God is using, have you ever noticed yourself in this situation where God's drawing you to the secret place, where that's the place where you draw from the Lord and he feeds you, and he even allows your situations that hurt and that are painful to actually bring you closer to him, and you begin to feed on the supernatural thing that doesn't look supernatural at first? See, this is what God does in process. But then the Bible says he had to dry up the brook. Because here's the thing that happens. Sometimes the Lord has to dry it up, not because he didn't want to have intimacy anymore. It's because he would have stayed there and been okay with that. But where did God send him next? He now sends him to Zarephath. And he sends him to the woman at Zarephath, and what happens there? He gets there, and instead of Zarephath, he goes to Zarephath, and he now is speaking to this widow woman who's on her last meal. We all know these stories. We've heard this in children's church our whole lives. He goes, go prepare a meal for me, and she's like, man of God, this is crazy. I mean, this is crazy. Why would you do this? He goes, oh, go ahead. This is our last meal. So, well, go ahead and make me a meal first. Now, first of all, that is crazy. This is it's almost like this ridiculous word. Have you ever got a ridiculous word? Have you ever felt the Lord asked you to do something that made no sense? I mean, you are in good company. Because if the Lord's ever had you do something that makes no sense, that sounds like most of the things he has me do. I'm like, God, why do I gotta be weird? And you know, like God has, like the other day, the Lord is like, I was outside and I felt like I was supposed to like shout, and all these cars are coming by, and I'm like, just kind of looking, I'm like, Ram! Ram! And I'm like trying to shout it like with no one seeing me. Then I'm finally like, this isn't working unless I do this all the way. And then finally, it's that death and me humbling myself to what God is saying that produces the breakthrough.